Hello and welcome to Critical Weight Theory. Today we're heading north, far north. Well, I'm already there. I'm already in the Upper Peninsula, which we're talking about today. Anyway, it's past the Straits of Mackinac, across that sweep of water where Lake Michigan meets Lake Huron, and onto a stretch of land Michiganders treat with equal parts pride and myth, the Upper Peninsula, or as locals call it, the UP. Some push it even further and say Yoop. And the people, well, we're called Yoopers, just so you know. And the UP sits apart from the rest of Michigan. It's almost a different world. Wisconsin hugs its southern edge, but everywhere else the land is wrapped in water. Lake Superior crowns the north, Lake Michigan presses from the west, Lake Huron curves along the east. It is beautiful sometimes, remote sometimes, and for many travelers a surprise. Again, sometimes, because even though the UP makes up nearly a third of Michigan's land, only about 3% of the state's population lives there. And that sense of space is real. The roads run long, forests roll for miles, and winter hits pretty hard. Well, most of the time. A few winters ago, I can say that it was actually freakishly warm. It was unseasonably warm, and dare I say it, it might have been global warming. Oh no, I know some people, they don't want to hear about that, but that's what it might have been. But this winter is actually more like a traditional one. We've got snow on the ground. It's cold when I walk across our local bridge, and so on and so forth. There's kids out sledding, probably building snowmen, making snow angels, and all that kind of stuff. So, lots of traditional wintry stuff already happening, and it's not even Christmas yet. If you stand in the western part of the peninsula, you'll find the Porcupine Mountains, aka the Porkies, one of the oldest mountain ranges on the continent, worn down but still wild. The whole region feels like a deep breath away from everything busy and loud. But I must admit, I've never actually been to the Porcupine Mountains that I can recall. I don't remember being there as a kid. If I was, I just don't remember it. Um, but I've heard that it's nice. I've heard that it's nice. And the Yoopers are known for grit, humor, and a goofy accent, and a certain no nonsense warmth that's carved from long winters and long drives. Isolation gave the region a sturdy identity, and I do have to say, though, that it's not true that if you've met one Yooper, you've met them all. Believe it or not, we're actually human beings. Our personalities are different, they diverge. There there are many different types of Yoopers actually, so it's it's like anywhere. You find people who defy stereotypes and whatnot. So the region also forged its own history, of course. Although, of course, a lot of that history is from immigration too. So during the Industrial Revolution, iron and copper pulled workers north and carved towns out of the wilderness. And in places like Houghton and Hancock, which is basically where I'm around, the ground was rich with copper. The area earned the name the Copper Country, and mining defined daily life for generations. Mining plus also the logging industry. For example, my dad worked at a place called Northern Hardwoods for about 23 years, and he would flip it off whenever I was driving with him. Maybe not literally every time, but fairly often he flipped off Northern Hardwoods. So not everybody loves the work that they have. That's a little bit of a factoid about my own family history right there. And my mom was a nurse, and of course, in addition to all this talk about, how isolated we are and all that kind of stuff, we also do have things like Walmart's. There's an Applebee's around where I'm at. I live close to a gas station, and you know, I I work at a movie theater, etc., etc. So it's not like we're totally roughing it out here, and there's like no civilization or anything like that. So people might want to relax on that kind of talk a little bit. Like I don't go outside and I'm encountered by, or I encounter a grizzly bear or something like that, or a polar bear or something. I've seen a moose two times in my life, and one time was when I was a kid. I saw a moose that was actually not that far from a grocery store, and another time I was actually taking a bus trip, and it was late at night. It was getting late at night, and a moose just appeared in front of the bus. So it's a good thing that the driver was paying attention, because if we had hit the moose, well, that might have been the end. You know what I'm saying? It might have been curtains for us. And oddly enough, maybe the moose would have just, you know, shrugged it off and went along its business, went on its way, but it would have messed up the bus. So, we do have wild animals around here. When I'm arriving at work, sometimes in the morning, I've heard coyotes actually making coyote like sounds out in the woods. So, we're not totally away from nature, that's for sure. But, there's no guarantee that you're going to see all sorts of wild animals that you wouldn't see like anywhere else. I've got squirrels and rabbits all over the place in the yard of the house that I live in, and it's a it's a nice thing, to have nature around you, and you do have plenty of that around here. So it's not as remote as some people make it out to be, but it is still pretty remote. It's isolated a little bit, and as far as the mining stuff, my I guess my he might have been a great uncle. Anyway, he worked in a mine, not a mine, in a in a mine, and he apparently died in a mining accident. And I once looked at his paycheck his records, and it made that history a little bit more real. So yeah, the mining history is a real thing around here, and that part has shifted though. The mines have mostly gone quiet, and the draw of the UP has only grown for outdoorsy people. So we're really ramping up the tourism stuff. I think there are actually efforts to increase the nightlife component of this area as well. So I've noticed more people, they're out and about during the later night hours, probably more than in the past. I think they're trying to do more musical stuff, more cultural stuff. They're trying to have more events to keep people interested in, I guess, just going out and enjoying the the social aspects of the area. And tourism drives the modern economy. Basically, people come for the trails, the state and the national forests, the waterfalls, and of course, Lake Superior shoreline. That's another significant draw. Some come for the silence, some come for the storms, and people like to come here to ski and to snowboard and stuff like that. So there have been a few occasions where I've actually seen people setting up cameras to capture themselves just snowboarding around, and not necessarily in the woods, but even just in in populated areas. So there definitely is a winter aspect to the tourism here, and I really regret that I haven't skied, but I've definitely have gone sledding on a few occasions. And of course there's a lot of snowmobile tourism too. So if you have a snowmobile, well, this is actually a pretty good area most of the time in the winter if you're one of those people. And a dirty little secret, though, I do have to say this because I try to be honest here. Some locals actually pretty much hate snowmobilers. You know that they make a lot of noise and they often will come from out of the state, and you're probably going to be fine. I don't think there's going to be a conflict on average between locals and outsider snowmobilers, but just be aware that you're annoying some people if if you're an outsider arriving on a snowmobile. And you know it's just one of those things. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but it's it's something that annoys some people. And there's one iconic way you can enter the UP. There's a 5 mile link between the peninsulas called the Mackinac Bridge. I talked about it in a recent episode or two. It's one of the longest suspension bridges between anchorages on the planet, stretching across these straits like a promise that the vast, rugged world of the UP is only a drive away. And it really is. It's easy to get here, and you could, of course, get to it through other ways. I guess just drive through Wisconsin to get here if you want. And you can also take a plane. We've got airports, a few airports that you could arrive at if you're choosing that way. And bus travel would be another relatively easy way to get here if you're into that. And basically, that's the Upper Peninsula. Obviously, there's more I could talk about, and I will in future episodes, but we are remote sometimes, tough sometimes, stunning sometimes, and absolutely worth the trip sometimes. I mean, I can't promise you're going to be excited if you show up here. Obviously, anybody could be bored anywhere they go if they're jaded enough. I can't promise you're gonna have a good time. I can't promise you're gonna have a revelation of an experience and that you'll want to stay. Obviously, if you go anywhere and have unique bad experiences, you might think, well, that place sucks. But maybe you would like the UP. Even some people who try to get out of this area, they say, "Oh, I hate that area." Well, I've known some of those people to actually return for one reason or another, and sometimes it might be because they didn't realize how good it actually was here compared to some other areas in the world. So it's not like we're perfect, and I don't want to cater too much to the mythologizing about the place, but there are definitely some far worse places that you could go. So feel free to check out the UP if you want. And I think I've said enough. You have a pretty good idea. And I will do some future episodes to elaborate on some other aspects of life in the UP.